It also sought to deal with some of the perception that because of the way that Title I was being implemented, a lot of kids were in pull-out programs. So if you think back to your own childhood, if you were in public school, there were kids who were pulled out to resource room. There was this unstated, or I should say understated, perception that kids who were in resource room weren't necessarily as smart as the rest of the kids. So therefore, no one really expected much from them. So therefore, they weren't given very hard classes to take because they were in resource room. And I think that's this 1994 Act was trying to deal with some of what had become the negatives of receiving federal funds. That kids who were labeled not as bright, in their schools they didn't have AP classes, or they weren't encouraged to take those, and so we saw bad things like tracking and other things that were intended to support kids, but they became deviations from kids being able to achieve their goals without their parents having to fight every single thing. And so in an effort to remove the stigmatism, the enactment of the Improving America Schools Act sought to ensure and require that all kids meet higher standards. It also moved aid and gave it to schools so that states would allocate it to schools versus the individual student. What's interesting is that we're moving back the other way, that funding is now being moved to the individual kid in acknowledgement that it's the student that drives education. And so it's wherever the kid goes that their support should be. It shouldn't be about the school necessarily. And so when that was signed into law, it also allowed for many districts across the country to think through their own academic standards. And I believe for New York City, or at least New York State, in 1996 is when we started to see the first shift in governance change. Some of that had to do with school boards, but the other parts of it were about dealing with new standards that were coming from the feds. And so the Goals 2000, which established a framework in which to identify world-class academic standards that were being implemented by states, that it also started to look at measuring student progress and providing support to students that may need the assistance so that they can meet those standards. And so in that same time period in New York State, there was a movement and there was work that was being done to reestablish strong and high standards for students and to communicate them more clearly so that they weren't just the purview of the educators, but now parents and the school community needed to know this is what's expected. This is what's expected of your children. I came into education in 1999 as a school board, and I remember when we started to push standards with parents, and that's also when many teachers began to experience standards as their bulletin boards. So people started paying attention to the bulletin boards because they thought the magic was on the walls. But the thing to know is that this Goals 2000, which was implemented in 94, well, developed in 94 and signed in 95, that it also sought to codify 6 of the original education goals of school readiness, school completion by students, meaning graduation, student academic achievement, that meant monitoring and making sure you knew whether or not your kids are doing well. Leadership in math and science. It was very clear at that time that we didn't have enough children growing up wanting to go into the field of math and science, and that we were moving into a service industry, but also with strong technology needs, and there weren't enough people going into the field. And at that time, there was concern that a lot of American jobs would be lost overseas. Some of that has actually come to fruition. But that also, as part of that act, there was an intention to provide for adult literacy, realizing that we had a lot of grown-ups who had gone to school prior to, that had been poorly educated, if educated at all. We also had an increase of immigrants who had come to the United States and who also needed to benefit from learning the language and becoming literate in English. And then as well, we needed to ensure that our schools were safe and drug-free. If you think about the 90s and what was going on there socially, there was a lot of fear that our society was in danger, was in peril. But then it also added two new goals: encouraging teacher professional development and parental participation. And that last one wasn't so much a new goal as a restatement of the goal around parental participation. So I want to read to you just what it says about what Goals 2000 was intended, and you think through whether or not we've accomplished that. So that by the year 2000, so if you're looking at the presentation, I'm on number 7, all children in America will start school ready to learn. The high school graduation rate will increase to at least 90%, and that's supposed to be national. All students will leave grades 4, 8, and 12 having demonstrated competency over challenging subject matter, including English, mathematics, science, foreign languages, civics and government, economics, the arts, history, and geography. And every school in America will ensure that all students learn to use their minds well